Okay, welcome back everyone. Our next panel discussion is focused on the defining topic of 2020, which has been COVID-19 obviously, and the procurement agility lessons that have been learned. We'll be considering in this panel how to rapidly adjust your procurement strategy when there are sudden and significant demand and supply shocks in order to keep meeting your business's needs and continue prioritising your long-term initiatives. It's my pleasure to welcome our panelists and please give a warm round of virtual applause to Claire Costello, who's the Chief Procurement Officer with Co-op, Christophe Verlaine, who's Global Head of Procurement Excellence with Nestle, Denis Royer, SVP of Procurement Services at WNS, and Jarrod Glover, Head of Procurement UK with Santander. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. I will now just ask each of you before we get into the questions to briefly introduce yourself. Christophe, I'll start with yourself.
So, hi everyone. My role within the procurement company of Nestle is really to drive acceleration around our digital initiatives, people development journey, our analytics journey, as well as driving some category-specific initiatives to drive further value for the business.
Fantastic, welcome. Denis, yourself second.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. So I'm SVP of EMEA Procurement at WNS Denali, which is the procurement business unit of WNS. And my role is to help organizations build and run enhanced procurement operating models with greater reach, effectiveness, and efficiency. So at WNS Denali, we co-create with our clients some solutions to achieve enhanced capability and capacity and automation. In terms of background, I have 20 plus years of experience in procurement transformation, working in various global organizations in telecom, aerospace, and media. And I've also worked for 10 years for procurement service providers.
Lovely, thank you. Claire, yourself next.
Hi everybody. So I'm Claire Costello. I'm the CPO for the Co-op. I've been there for literally just over a year. I've had also over 20 years in procurement, all of it in retail, working previously for Asda and for Walmart. Looked after most categories in my career in goods not for resale. I did start in finance, don't hold that against me. I did come back out very quickly. So very much like the other guys, pretty much focused on delivering value for the organisation, looking heavily on what we call the procurement and all of those bits that support the business and making sure that we're delivering to the Co-op values. So it's a really exciting role in terms of helping the whole of the Co-op organisation, retail, funeral care, insurance, etc., to deliver the best possible value, but also doing it in a way that is true to the Co-op values. So yeah, really enjoy the role that we've got.
Lovely, great, thanks Claire. Last but not least, Jarrod, yourself.
Hi, so I'm Jarrod Glover. I'm the head of Santander UK procurement. So been with Santander for the last 6 years and as the head of procurement for almost the last 3 now. Before that, worked on third-party risk management. So again, like Claire says, don't hold that against me. And started out in construction before I moved over to FS. So experience across both those industries and yeah, the different challenges that we face.
Lovely, great range of experience. So let's get underway. To kick things off, $1 million question right now, and Jarrod, I'll start with you on this. What do you see as being the key area where procurement can add value to the business? You know, right now when we're going through an incredible time of crisis, what would that be for you?
So I think there are kind of 2 points to that for me. So I think the first thing is for our external customers, it's a time of great distress for them, and some of our customers also have the potential to be our suppliers as we offer obviously products to small to medium enterprises and have them banking with us, as well as large corporates. So there's a lot of changes in the macroeconomic environment that are affecting them and how people gain access to services and indeed individuals' continuity of income. So there are 2 ways that I'm seeing that as impacting me and what we've needed to do to respond. So firstly, we've had to be a lot more agile. So we've needed to launch products in a number of days that would normally take us a lot longer periods. So, for example, bounce back loans and C-bills, which the financial service sectors had to bring together in a very short amount of time to support our customers and also the market. So we need to make decisions in a really expedient way, focusing on the short-term gain, but also making sure that we don't sacrifice the long-term commercial position of the bank. So to be a lot more agile is the first piece. And the second piece, there's a lot of, I think, added value from us making sure that we critique the business and ensure that we check and challenge the way of operating to make sure that the cost position is really firmly understood, not just from the procurement side, but from the make side as well.
Sure, great. Thank you very much. Christophe, from yourself at Nestle, where do you see as being sort of the main area for procurement to add value right now?
I think that for us, it's pretty much in the same line, but nevertheless, one key element is really to keep in sight the business priorities and to adhere and focus on those, okay? And they will be evolving very fast in the crisis context. So our capability really to adapt fast to certain circumstances is what makes us successful. Within a year, you can have major shifts, but the overall strategy of the company is remaining in the long term the same going forward. So we have really to respond to the tactical needs of the business and be as closed as the business priorities would be. That could be around ensuring supply in some cases, or overall cost management in some other scenarios of our business. But for us, this is the ability really to adhere to those. The second point I would say is for us to be able really to be cross-functionally connected. I think that's one of the elements that is driving the value that we bring to the business. We are externally connected as well as heavily internally connected across the many functions such as finance, research and development. And your ability to manage this network, or our ability as a procurement function to manage this network, is also one of the key drivers for adding value to the company. And obviously with the business focus.
Great, fantastic. Denis, from your side of the fence, sort of seeing it from the solution provider angle and the range of sort of exposure you have to different industries, where are you seeing as sort of being the key area for procurement right now?
Well, some similar themes, but I'll try to give you a few examples in terms of what I'm seeing in the markets. I mean, for me, the key focus for procurement in changing times is to be agile, as Jarrod said, and also relevant with the business in creating sustainable value. So to be relevant, that means considering all the players and all the needs in your ecosystem. So I join Christophe in his comment about the interconnectedness of all the players. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So we've seen during the crisis, we've seen some clients focus on really the immediate crisis response. So we have one large grocery chain which was able to gain a sustainable advantage over the competition by being able to stay open while reassuring their customers and the staff, and that's part of the ecosystem with optimum safety measures. So they really reallocated resources to crisis management in procurement, and actually our sourcing team shifted its category focus overnight to source PPE products for 2,000 stores. So in their case, savings target is 0, but they made up for it with increased revenues and profit. So that's one example, but it's really not one size fits all. And it takes us back to the question of driving value, I think, by way of aligning to the business. And that's why I said being relevant. We call it total business alignment. And being proactive about it. So for me, it's key to understand what your business needs as a CPO and how it might have changed during the crisis. Is it cost savings? Is it supply assurance? Is it greater access to marketplaces, increasing the service and so on? Because, you know, companies like, if I take an example, like Amazon or Facebook or Airbus, they all have different needs. So, so while we have a great panel today to grab some insights, I would say for people who are listening to us, it always goes back to what's in your own business. And one last point, maybe I say I'm seeing an increased drive from procurement functions to capture more value. So through the current environment, be it process improvement, be it digitalization to enhance the connectedness, again, and the agility, I'm convinced that every CPO has many opportunities to add further value in current times.
Fantastic, thank you. Claire, yourself, what's your perspective on this at the moment?
I think it feels very similar in terms of where all of us have been focused. I completely agree with what everybody said about interconnectedness, networking, and actually just being there to listen to the genuine needs of the business. The bits that I would probably add would be around on the piece of listening to the business. You're there as that independent ear sometimes. And you find in times of crisis, there's a very emotional reaction sometimes, particularly in service industries where we're looking to look after customers as well. And I'm sure Jarrod would have felt this from a banking side. So helping people understand what's a knee-jerk reaction and putting that into the position of, what's the right decision to take. So yes, let's have the conversation, let's listen, but then helping them navigate through the difficult questions sometimes that need answering to get to the best possible solution. And as Denis and Christophe have said, a lot of that is also then around networking to the other parts of the organisation to make sure that you've got the right level of risk governance and kind of sense checking that goes in there to get those right decisions being made. That isn't in a means of slowing down, because clearly it has to be incredibly pacey on some of these very business critical, very immediate needs. And that's where your network becomes so important. I think the other thing which may be slightly unique to a retail organisation, and again, it's a little bit about network, but it's also about understanding the needs of the two customers that we have. So for me, I have my internal customer, which is looking after our colleagues across all of the different businesses that we have. But clearly, we'll also, our primary focus is to make sure that we're servicing our customers. And so it's making sure that we've thought through the impact at the end of the line. So those consumers walking through our store doors, those people who are a very, very difficult time are entering our funeral care homes, people who are looking for insurance. So everything that we do is making sure that we're thinking about it holistically, so that even though it's a crisis-taking moment, that we think about how that's going to land at the end of it. And I think quite often procurement can be very, and procurement individuals can be very logical, and that just brings a whole level of confidence, surety, clarity of thought into those conversations, which, as I started with, it can be quite an emotional start point when you're trying to solve problems.
On that,
yeah,
sorry,
Jarrod,
Ben,
go. Absolutely, go.
Just interested in the other panelists' view, but I think that there's been a move, certainly from what I've seen in procurement, to move towards more of a consumer journey for our internal customers, so to replicate how they would buy when they're at home or when they're in store. So replicating, to use Denis' example, that Amazon experience where they're able to go through and have a procurement experience that's almost frictionless, and you don't see the contact with the procurement employees. I think Claire's point and the point that the guys have made is a really important reflection, because during this crisis, what I've seen is people want to know that procurement are there and they want to be able to talk to them more. Whereas before, there was probably more of a pressure to say, I want to press a button and tomorrow I want to walk outside and find that something's happened. Now they want to know, if I press this button, what happens, who's on the end of it, and are they all right? So I just wondered whether that's a similar experience for everyone else, moving towards frictionless and actually seeing that need to be more visible during these periods.
Christophe or Claire, would you have a comment on Jarrod's point there? Have you been finding that yourselves?
Yes, to a certain extent. I would say that the frictionless piece around the operational activities and enabling certain pieces to accelerate within the transactional journeys, for example, has been an obvious step. But I think that what this crisis brought as well is the strategic importance of a resilient and connected procurement organization. And I think that for us, what it brought really to this picture is our ability really to respond to the business needs when you have evolutions of sales that are either very high up or very down from one day to the next. The shift between the needs from the function and from a strategic perspective and even a supplier engagement perspective is really high and highly relevant for the company, for us to either preserve our costs or to ensure the growth and ensure the supply for this growth. So I think that, yes, the transactional piece is one thing, and obviously our ability to be frictionless in those tense times is and has been key. Where I see most value brought to the company is more on the strategic piece. And it allowed many procurement functions or leaders, I would think, to be earning a seat at the table of the decision-making process for the business, which wasn't, I believe, or I understand, not that present or not that visible in the past.
It's a fair point. I think obviously a lot of you mentioning sort of agilience and that internal alignment. And I think with the speed that decisions have been able to be made and having procurement involved in those decisions, I think has been a really good thing for procurement teams through the crisis, and is something I hope that will continue. You know, when we come out the other side of this and processes maybe go back to their old ways, that sort of that involvement and that ability to be internally aligned and to make quick decisions is something that sticks around. I'm curious to ask, sort of having looked back at so the last few months for the panelists, sort of what were your biggest surprises, and whether these are good surprises, bad surprises, whichever, just in terms of how your own teams and the procurement, you know, functioned during the crisis. Claire, I'll start with you on this one.
I think the biggest surprise was how quickly and easily everybody adapted to a business as usual approach. I mean, I think everybody will have felt the same. You know, we've had to go through, certainly within the co-op, you know, it's a UK-based organisation. Everybody was within an office. It wasn't really very remote, which for me personally was a bit of a change, because I'd come from Walmart, where I was based in the UK and working with the US. So actually, to some extent, this has been like going home for me, working from home. But for the bulk of my team, my colleagues, my peers, my suppliers, you know, everybody suddenly switched to being at home and being online. And the pace at which everybody just became okay with that, I think that was a really good surprise. I think the other really good surprise was the way that it was a level playing field. So both those critical pieces of activity that needed to be done very, very quickly, and the business as usual that still happens because, you know, life hasn't stopped, we've still got strategies to deliver, has continued, and everybody has still maintained good levels of discussion, conversation, meeting cadence. And in fact, to some extent, the feedback has been, it's been better because everybody's been present and everybody's present on the screen. Whereas when you're trying to figure out how you're going to travel and get people together, you tend to lose one member of the party at some point. So I think the biggest surprise for me has been the pace at which this new way of working was very quickly adopted, accepted, and just became very settled.
Yeah, that's very true. Denis, from your perspective, what have you been surprised about, sort of in terms of how your clients and their procurement functions have operated during the crisis?
Well, for me, it's actually a good surprise, despite the crisis. I think what I saw is that procurement has not been relegated back to the role of cost cutting. And when the pandemic started and businesses started to shut down, and a lot of people thought that the focus was going to be on savings and more savings and savings again, and everything else is on hold. And in fact, that prediction was a false prediction. And we're still seeing our clients partner strategically with the business, looking at long-term impact, and actually seizing the current times as an opportunity to accelerate transformation. So that's to me really great news. We have a number of clients who are relooking at their operating model, at their digital maturity, and who are investing in long-term projects. So not something that necessarily we would have expected back in March, April, when things were really fluid. So I see a greater push on end user experience. We talked about connectedness and being remote, as well as compliance, with quite a bit, for example, of tail spend management initiatives being launched in the market. And I also see procurement organizations taking a harder look at their operating models. So with the switch to working from home, as Claire said, it has highlighted a number of opportunities to improve the connectedness and to improve the efficiency within everyone's ecosystem. So there's a need to better master knowledge, have better access to data, better visibility. So we see it as driving new projects in terms of process improvements and digital enablement.
Great. Jarrod, for yourself, what have been the surprises for you?
I think a lot of what I'm going to say is going to echo Claire. So I think that we'd fortunately already begun adopting some of the virtual technologies that we're now heavily reliant on. So we'd had a bit of a head start, but the speed in which we moved from being, early adopters to, seasoned warriors of the virtual technology was really, really rapid. And that's enabled our organization to move forward in incredibly short lead times, which I'm very pleased with. I think maybe, as Claire and Denis have talked a lot about the business aspect, which I echo. Maybe I think the other thing that I've found very, very pleasing and surprising is, as virtual conferences eat into our lives, which I think they are for everyone, the amount of time I spend on Zoom or Teams or other brands are available during the day is it's pretty much 9 to 5. But I think there's much more of a culture of openness and feedback about work-life balance and how we're impacting on that. So people are more willing to say, I'm not going to join this call at this time because I've got to go and do the school run. Whereas I think that attitude of presenteeism in the office potentially limited people's ability to do that. And people potentially felt that there was a social stigma on giving those kind of feedback. And why is that good for me? Well, I think that opens up our ability to recruit people across the spectrum. As people are more open and honest, they have the ability to be more flexible within their work environment, which should mean that we're able to gain a greater, more flexible and more diverse workforce. Obviously, every business unit's going to be thinking that, so it's first mover advantage for whoever can get there first. But I do think in procurement, we probably have that opportunity to be that first mover, and it's certainly made me think about location of some of my employees and where I advertise roles.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. I'm keen to talk a little bit about digital transformation. Obviously, that's been a really sort of key issue through the last few months, as quite simply everyone's been working from home. Visibility through procurement and through supply chain has been difficult, and digital transformations that have been successfully implemented, I think, have been really well highlighted. Christophe and Denis, I know this is something that you're both quite passionate about. So Denis, I'll start with you on this one. I'm curious what your sort of viewpoint is on sort of what some of the the big game-changing digital transformation opportunities that you think CPOs should be considering.
How much time do we have? So I think it's a great question, and for me, digital transformation isn't just about incorporating new technologies and tools, but again, it requires mastering your procurement ecosystem. So the stakeholders, the suppliers, but also the business imperatives, how's data being managed, market intelligence, regulations, and so on and so on. So it's really looking at this holistically. And well, we've actually recently released a digital guidebook that some of our listeners might be interested in, and we shared our learnings on the key rules for any digital journey. So including how to align your initiatives to your unique environment, how to set your vision for the function that supports digital, and why it's so important to self-assess your maturity and understand what it means in terms of choices, because again, we're back to it's not one size fits all, and it's relevant to the environment. I'd add to that we recently polled procurement leaders across a large array of organizations about their top initiatives to increase their strategic impact. And the data showed that digital transformation was a top priority. So I guess here nobody's surprised. And in fact, 83% of the CPOs have implemented digital tools already. So at this stage, nothing surprising. But an interesting insight was only 28% saw a positive ROI from their investments. And there were a number of issues in terms of adoption, in terms of disconnect between the original vision or business case and what was happening in practice. So that's a big problem, and why is there such a big disconnect between the appetite for new technology and user adoption is something that needs to be looked at. I would say what we see is that in some cases, organizations rush to implement some sexy digital solutions without considering how it's going to connect within the ecosystem. And we've got some practical examples of those and trying to support. So in closing, I think to fully address your question, because Ben, you were asking about game-changing opportunities, I see three areas, and I'm sure there's more, and Christophe will add to it, but I see a key one around the end user experience, and we are talking about remote and so on, but guided buying solutions, chatbots, and continuing the implementation and the adoption of best-of-breed P2P solution for me is one. Second one, I would say everything around knowledge and insights. So putting the relevant information at everyone's fingertips, be it category knowledge and market intelligence for sourcing teams or deep analytics to drive insights with AI and machine learning. That's the second area that I see in terms of game-changing ones for the future. And the last one I would put as automation, last but not least, but really around increasing the speed and the resilience of the procurement function to increase the service quality. And we've seen that with changes and disruption, having some robust systems and having automation is a great enabler, and also allows the team to focus on their strategic initiatives and innovation for the business.
Great, thank you. Christophe, what's your perspective on this in terms of digital transformation opportunities in procurement?
I think that I'll start to come back to a point that Denis has been raising. I think that one of the main driver around the digitalization journey, and sometimes, or apparently in 30% of the times succeeding, is the fact that digital as such is not a business strategy. Okay, for us, it's an accelerator to business priorities and business strategies. And many times I've been discussing with some of my peers or other functions where, people were coming to us and say, we have a ton of data. Okay, and with all these digital capabilities, we should be able to do something with the data. And this is the other way around that we really need to understand, is that we start with a business priority, and then we need to understand how this business priority translates into the procurement environment, for example, and then how technology can accelerate it. I've seen many projects saying we want to go AI for this, when in fact a simple report was sufficient to enable the acceleration, or vice versa. So I think that if I may go for a recommendation, the first thing is being brilliant at the basics. And you were mentioning the P2P suites. I think this is something that I would recommend to any CPO. The frictionless topic that we were mentioning before, basics have to be in place, as integrated and as efficient or automated as possible. The second thing is really to leverage your digital ecosystem or your focus, because we usually tend as well to have a limited budget to invest into those initiatives, is really to focus on what matters for your business. If it's cost that you're trying to achieve, cost efficiencies, it's either within the MOJI area and you may focus more on automation. If it's within the, let's say, your cost of goods, then you may want to consider predictive technologies for price prediction or volume predictions that will serve your buyers to be able to contract better. So those are the kind of things. What a point that I've been putting to myself here, I think that there will be accelerated business opportunities to grasp in the consideration of upcoming intelligent systems. Okay, our ability really to leverage those and our capability to link it to a business result and demonstrate it is what is making those digital initiatives successful. Because as soon as it is demonstrated, reinvestment is ensured. There's a return on investment. It's when really we have deployed a solution and people didn't understand the purpose that we are failing. And most of the time, this is what's happening in major change programs, is that the purpose is somehow diluted into digital initiatives with key milestones, project milestones, but not with a direct link to P&L impact, balance sheet impact, all those kind of things that are highly relevant for the people in the business to reinvest into our journey. So that would be my recommendation to the CPOs of this world is first, use the digitalization as an accelerator to a business journey and not the other way around. And second, focus on where it matters at the time that it is needed, okay? Efficiency may be required in a certain period in time when acceleration and insights, from our suppliers, either from a risks perspective or from a better understanding of the cost structures, can be ensured through other type of technologies. So that would be in few words my recommendation for this interesting journey. Going forward, I think that from a strategy perspective, the future is going to change the world of our function. We're going to be having a lot of impact on the way our people are interconnecting, on the way they will be executing their work as well. We can see bots arriving for tactical purchases. We can see a lot happening on research management or price prediction that do not require research analysts as they were before. So what's the impact, and the overall impact on the organization is to be also anticipated by CPOs.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Christophe. I'm conscious that we're winding down towards the end of the panel. So I think what I would like to do is just ask each of you just for a closing comment. Whether that's been something you've learned this year, key change in your strategy, what you're focusing on for the next year, anything learned from this panel that you just think as a sort of final pearl of wisdom, as it were, that you'd like to sort of close out with. Jarrod, I'll start with you on this one.
So I think from my point of view, what has changed for us this year, and what this year is driving, is acceleration. So there are a lot of things that prior to now we would have taken longer to do and done in a more of a waterfall project, and now we're being a lot more agile and launching things quicker to try and add business benefit. So we've launched an internally developed app recently that we did in 2 months to replace a product that took 18 months to embed prior. So it's moving those things at speed and failing fast to try and add that benefit to the bottom line of the business and to your customers.
Great, thank you. Claire, yourself.
I think we've talked a lot already about pace and simplification. I think one of the other really big learning points over the last few months for me, not new, but kind of like this continuation, is the strength of relationships with your supply base. The time and the effort that we put into relationship management has paid back in dividends at those points of crisis. And I think all of us have probably got very strong relationships with our key and strategic suppliers. I think what it's really highlighted for us is just the weight of gold that is worth. The effort going into that is just so important, both coming out of the crisis, because it is continuing to allow us to accelerate at pace and to face into some of those simplification projects, because now that we've gone through a crisis together, there's sort of an in it together moment. So relationships, I think, for me, both within the business, but as importantly outside with our key suppliers.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely, being sort of the customer of choice and sort of getting that now as a result of all the hard work you put in. Absolutely true. Denis, your closing comments for us.
Well, I think 2020, we talk about crisis. I think 2020 has been a great opportunity to expose some areas of risk or strain for the organization, but to do that in a positive sense, giving everyone an opportunity to reflect on their strategic direction, on their momentum, and whether they needed to speed up in certain areas or refocus. So I really see it as a chance to seize transformation opportunities, to continue on the journey, to increase the total business value. We've spoken today about frictionless, about connectivity, and a number of insights, but maybe one parting word in terms of where I see the future is is around data and data visibility and data insights. And I think that's at the forefront of the success, particularly in times of uncertainty and remoteness. So I think that's an area where organizations are making some great strides in this area on their own or by leveraging third parties like WNS or others in that space, but really looking at it in a very optimistic way. And I'd like to thank all the panelists for this great discussion.
Great, thank you. And Christophe, I'll leave it with you to close us out with your parting words.
Okay, so
No
look,
pressure.
very similar to everyone. I mean, the pace of acceleration has been one of the most impactful thing that we've seen. And when we say acceleration, as in here, I take it highly positively. It brought us a lot of opportunities that we could grasp in an accelerated way. But maybe what it also obliged us to do is to really make choices that were highly relevant for the business and leave the other nice to haves aside or for a future journey. And this could only be done because of our people. This is extremely clear. For us, the success has been people-based, despite we are talking about a digitalization journey. The resilience, the professionalism, the engagement of our people has been what has making us successful in this journey and highly relevant for the business. So maybe a word going forward for the future, as Denis was mentioning, indeed data accelerated decision making or let's say a bit more conscious decision making is going to be the future for our organization. But the main question is, for what purpose?
Great, lovely note to end on. Thank you all very much. Really productive panel. A lot of really excellent takeaways from that. Just to let everyone watching know, to tie in with this panel, ProcureCon and WNS have just released a procurement pulse check benchmark survey. This is going to be reporting on procurement's current state and the 2021 forecast. By joining in with the survey, you'll be able to compare across various dimensions of procurement performance and maturity and just get a glimpse into what CPO's top priorities for 2021 and beyond are. The QR code for that survey will be displayed shortly, and we'll be back again shortly with our next session. But to all the panelists, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. A great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.